the Ripple decision was adverse to the commission, the SEC has to learn from that and say, okay, we've lost this. And again, they're going to appeal it. But as things stand today, June, I would say they need to reflect upon that and take a step back and say, okay, how do we modify our strategy from here? Of course, Ripple is going to be appealed, and that probably will get all the way up to the Supreme Court, I would think, because it's such an important issue, not just in terms of the law, but in terms of the future of the American financial markets. So that's, let's call it unsettled at this time.
Hey, everybody. It's Eri from Tokyo. This is your cryptocurrency update from Japan. And that intro was Anthony Sabino. He's a law professor at the St. John's University, who CoinDesk quoted in May to drop a case post-indictment means change in circumstances that dissuades the prosecution from continuing. I'm talking about Steven Nerayoff, who has damaging evidence against the SEC, FBI, and DOJ, and attorney John Deaton has seen the receipts. He's taken him on as a client, and he explained that there is an attorney-client agreement in place that firmly protects communication between lawyers and their clients. Everybody who has an interest in the ETHGATE is watching his Twitter feed or X feed carefully, because he has some information that's going to be revealed, and we are told to just be patient. This reveal is important, of course, for the XRP army, but it's important for the entire world, as we really need to pursue this decentralized justice to weed out the corruption that exists. My book, Food Stamp Warrior, a memoir by John, is to arrive today, and it probably is going to be the fastest book I've ever read. James Rule XRP shared an image that shows John as the second bestseller in the culinary biographies and memoirs. And the reason why it's falling into the culinary category is because the word food in his title. I checked right before preparing to record for this video, and in the category of just memoirs, you can see that his book is ranked 78th on Amazon. Let's listen to the last 60 seconds of that clip from the law professor Sabino.
That's why the real key is going to be, let's see what happens when Ripple and the Rakoff decision, I don't recall which case it was, goes up to the Second Circuit, because they're there to conciliate these and to reconcile one decision to the other. And then they get the next to last word. And why I say next to last word is because they could still go to the U.S. Supreme Court. But let's also keep in mind, as the Supreme Court itself said decades ago, they regard the Second Circuit as the, quote, mother court, close quote, of the federal securities laws. They are very deferential to what the Second Circuit says. So the battle or the controversy is far from over, June. This is just one of many battles, and we have to see what the Second Circuit says about Ripple and these related cases in the years to come. And so I think really bottom line is that everybody's going to go great guns. Crypto is on a roll. It's not going to stop. Okay, Gary Gensler wants to make sure his agency is regulating this, and that's consistent with his personal behavior because he regulated it as the head of the CFTC not too long ago. A lot of action, a lot of controversy in the years to come. This is just one stop. Okay, my advice is everybody have a good Labor Day weekend because the battle's going to start as soon as we get back.
David Schwartz, the CTO of Ripple, loves to answer random questions on Quora. He's left over 13,000 answers, answering questions even as recent as Saturday and Sunday, topics from Pokemon image rights to DNA testing and paternity suits. I've read all his XRP topics over the years, and I posted one on X yesterday that many liked. He was asked if banks were to adopt Ripple, which means they would have to purchase XRP, would they not want to keep the market price of XRP low? If XRP is finite, example, cannot be mined, then wouldn't that hinder mainstream adoption? And he says, no, the price of XRP you need to make $1 million payment would always be at least 1 million. The truth is precisely the opposite. Higher prices tend to correlate with higher liquidity, which means cheaper payments. And when you come down to the very bottom, so a higher priced asset is a better vehicle for payments, at least if you're targeting high value payments. Moving right along, there's a nice active thread going on with a post about Futureverse minting the FIFA NFTs on the XRP ledger. Yeah, 4 million of them. And it's connected to the AI-powered football or soccer game, and they're dynamic. These are dynamic game NFTs, not art. Aaron McDonald jumped in the thread. He's the co-founder of Futureverse, which has millions invested into it. A lot of money behind this big project. Ripple is one of the investors. So it says, yes, these are dynamic game NFTs rather than art. The characters can both change by learning new skills in the AI training or by changing how they look. Amazing, right? The asset register service drives the metadata that will render the right characters in whatever environment they are used. This AI combination with blockchain is just going to be explosive. On the ledger asks, so the sale of the NFTs, the rarity, and all the attributes that generate their worth are purchased and sold in the XRP ledger using XRP, or are they purchased on the root network using the root network asset? And Aaron goes on to say that it depends because the interoperability allows for both scenarios. Wow. Since the tokens are interoperable and these marketplaces are interoperable, the token that's determined to be used could make the purchase in any approved token. Say, for example, a stablecoin on XRPL. Everybody's talking about stablecoins. Have you noticed? In any of these scenarios, XRP is used as gas. Well, see, there you go. This is really, really an interesting collaboration. And Marco, the CTO of Futureverse, also came in and said, yes, no one has ever attempted to mint a single collection of over 4 million NFTs while we keep the game going. We have solved numerous problems to support the scale of the project, but also to make it reusable and replicable. These guys are breaking first ever new boundaries in this space. For all XRP holders, you want to know that XRP has a privileged position inside the Ripple network, and the network finds the cheapest path. That might be through XRP, but it also might not. The question was asked of David in this podcast. Is it possible that the US dollar could eventually be the reserve currency on the Ripple protocol? And David answered, it certainly is possible. This podcast remains my favorite. Every time I listen to it, I have a new aha moment. Because as your knowledge grows within the XRP ledger space, when you hear David talk about XRP and the ledger, as he explains it to a Bitcoin maxi in this particular podcast, you really start to grasp the incredible flexibility and interoperability and capabilities of the ledger. I think it's very important for you to listen to the video in its entirety. But if you're short on time, I'm going to let just about 8 minutes of that 50-some minute podcast take you out. It's got some of the key features that everybody who owns XRP should know about. All right, everybody, do take care. Sayonara for now. Bye-bye.
David is the chief cryptographer at Ripple Labs and one of the architects of the Ripple protocol. David, welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be here, John. Well, for people who understand Bitcoin, a simple way to understand Ripple is very much like Bitcoin, except that it can allow you to move any currency or any asset.
Okay.
So it's a distributed payment system. It doesn't require any central authority, but it can move any asset. So dollars, it can move cross-currency, cross-border.
Okay.
It's essentially targeted at use cases like cross-border payments, correspondent banking, those kinds of things.
Okay.
Everybody seems to recognize that the payment system is broken, that remittances are broken, correspondent banking is extremely inefficient, it's slow. You may have these beautiful front ends that are modern, but you dig down a couple of layers into where the settlement is happening, and it's like you've gone through a time machine into, if you're lucky, the 60s, and if you're not lucky, the 40s. These systems are ancient, and Ripple, rather than working from the top down, is working from the bottom up, going right after the way that large amounts of money actually move in trying to modernize that.
I see.
Ripple was designed from the very beginning to handle multiple assets. And so it has things like order books and Forex implemented natively. It has atomic payments so that you can use a longer path without having to worry about an intermediary failing to perform. So it was specifically built to solve the issues that exist in cross-currency and cross-border payments. In fact, one of the major use cases for the Ripple network right now is moving Bitcoins around because it provides faster settlement. So if you believe in Bitcoin as a currency, Ripple is a good way to move that currency around. It's not a competitor. If you're really attached to Bitcoin as a payment system or as a great way to actually do the movement of funds, then you could see Ripple as a competitor because Ripple pitches itself as a better way to make real-time payments.
I see. So Ripple really can help move Bitcoin more quickly. Is that right?
Yes. And I think that addresses some of the problems that Bitcoin has with confirmation time and transaction volume. Other systems that can allow Bitcoin payments to be made, I think, are good for the Bitcoin ecosystem.
Can you address the value of XRP for our listeners and for that guy?
Well, obviously, it's hard to predict the future, and there's certainly no such thing as a sure thing. Risk and reward always come in pairs. So the thinking is that if you have a large number of currencies on the Ripple network and a large number of institutions issuing them, it will be very difficult to find a direct path between two currencies. So if you have US dollars issued by a local chain and you want to pay somebody in Guatemala who gets cash at his grocery store, the probability that there'll be someone offering to trade one of those currencies directly for the other is pretty low, and that the liquidity will probably be through some intermediary currency. The Ripple network has a native intermediary currency called XRP, or sometimes called Ripples. And the advantage of Ripples is that there is no counterparty. There's nobody. It works just like Bitcoin. Your Ripple balance is just a number on your Ripple account on the Ripple network. And the theory is that because XRP doesn't require any trust or anything in common, it can flow between any two accounts. You don't have to agree to have somebody hold it for you. And so if that becomes the premier intermediary currency, then two types of people will want to hold XRP. One will be people who don't know what currency they'll need next. If the path from dollars to euros tends to go through XRP, then if you don't know whether you'll need dollars or euros, it makes sense to hold XRP because then you only have to pay half the spread. And then the other thing is market makers. If you're just trying to make a market and people who are selling their dollars want XRP because that's what they need to buy euros, then if you want to be able to buy dollars, XRP is the currency that you're going to need to hold to buy them. If that's the way it plays out, then the demand for XRP will go up, and therefore the price will go up. But again, nobody's crystal ball is clearer than anybody else's. That is certainly something that may or may not happen. So it happens automatically when you make a payment. The network finds the cheapest path. That might be through XRP, it might not. It could be through US dollars, it could be through Bitcoin. There could be multiple paths that you draw from so that you get the very best offers on multiple order books. So you wouldn't be consciously aware unless you really drilled into what was happening behind the scenes. You wouldn't necessarily be consciously aware of what intermediary currencies you held for a notional split second. But because XRP can flow between any two accounts and is trustless, it has a privileged position inside the Ripple network that could cause it to be preferred as an intermediary currency.
I see.
If that happens, demand will go up.
I see. Now, what if it doesn't happen?
It certainly might not. It could be that, for example, the Federal Reserve decides to issue dollars directly onto the Ripple network, and everybody thinks that's the perfect intermediary currency. And then XRP doesn't get that kind of role, in which case you would not see that increase in demand.
I see. Is it possible that just as the USD is the reserve currency of the world right now, against what a lot of people would like to see, is it possible that the USD could eventually be the reserve currency of the Ripple protocol, Ripple network?
It's certainly possible. You could also see another government, any country could do this, introducing, let's say, gold, 100% reserve-backed gold on the Ripple network, and people might decide, ooh, that's what I want to use as my reserve currency because maybe the government of China, let's say, does that and people trust them. There's certainly any number of ways this could play out. To some extent, Ripple Labs has bet on XRP. Ripple Labs holds an enormous number of XRP, and our primary business model is that they'll appreciate in the future. But of course, there's no guarantee.
I see. So now that concept that the US dollar could be the reserve currency of Ripple, of course, you know that people hearing this show and hearing that, if they've not heard that before, talk about ripples, right? Talk about ripples going out. That's going to cause a lot of people to be afraid and to think, wow, we don't want Ripple because the US government, I'm sure now, since they heard this episode of Bitcoins and Gravy, they're onto it for the first time. They're slow, they're sleeping usually. Now they're going to work as hard as they can to get the US dollar to be the reserve currency of Ripple, and we're back to the same place we were before Ripple, and Bitcoin and all this. What do you say to someone like that?
Well, they have to compete in a fair playing field. So the intermediary currency could be the US dollar, and you can still hold whatever currency you want. You can hold Bitcoin, you can hold Ripples, and that would just be where the liquidity is. And they would have to compete on a completely fair playing field because people don't choose intermediary currencies. They just make payments with the cheapest path they can find. So it's going to be competitive just like it is outside the Ripple network, except people will be able to move more easily between currencies. So if one currency has a small advantage that only affects a narrow group of people, they can still hold that currency without having the large cost that they would normally have to bear from making a different choice.
I see.
So it does enable more freedom of choice with currency. And in that kind of market, it remains to be seen what will be the preferred currency. It could be Bitcoins.
Yeah. This is exciting stuff. I mean, it sounds kind of like you're hinting at sort of a free market.
It is. It's a very free market. It's essentially a perfectly free market and a perfectly fair market. You don't even know the identity of the market maker or the currencies that you're using. All you're looking for is the cheapest path.
Wow. Now, just as far as the example we gave a minute ago of me sending money to you and you receiving it in euros, are people starting to get wind of this? I mean, why wouldn't someone be using this all the time? And, to send money to their kids in college, to send remittances. And I'm just talking about $20 here, $50 here, a birthday gift of $100 to somebody. Why aren't people just using this all the time? It seems like this is, if you're talking about it being that quick and that cheap and that flexible, it just seems like a no-brainer to me.
It is. You need three pieces for it to work. The person who's making the payment needs an easy way to get cash in. The person who's receiving the payment needs an easy way to get cash out, and someone has to provide the liquidity between the two assets if they're not the same asset. And so we're working on building up those pieces. And when you have the right pieces, a remittance pathway will emerge even without somebody, having to do anything special to make it happen.
And let me ask you, David, do you yourself hold any XRP?
I do, actually. I hold, I think, something like 16 million XRP.
Good Lord, man. 16 million.
Well, it's funny. I would hold more, and I think the risk reward makes sense. I mean, like if it's a 50% chance that it'll double, it's a good investment, right?
Sure.
The problem is my job, my stock options, to some extent, my professional reputation. How many eggs can I put in that one basket?